This is one heartbreaking scene. A man standing in a large shopping mall, facing the camera and saying, "They're closing. They're all closing down. Look, this is a mall in our area, and it's really heart-wrenching to see how depressing things have become. This entire row used to be filled with restaurants, and now they've all closed down. Every single store, including the big food court and convenience stores. None have been spared. This location is actually quite good. There are office buildings nearby and a residential community with a high occupancy rate. There's only one spicy hot pot restaurant left here, trying to survive. It's the only restaurant open in this whole mall, but there are no customers. What's the point of it then?" This is actually a common sight in China's restaurant industry in 2023. Over 1 million businesses have disappeared nationwide. This man is a restaurant owner who opened a grilled fish restaurant with 10 branches. When the wave of restaurant closures hit, none of his 10 stores survived. According to public data, in 2023, the number of revoked catering services exceeded 1.4 million, including both well-funded chain brands and long-established old brands, but also a significant number of unknown small catering shops. Within just 10 months, a staggering 44,000 coffee shops shut their doors for good. They say that to gauge the pulse of the Chinese economy, one should look no further than Shanghai. Nevertheless, being China's largest city and known for its bustling tourism in past years, it's quite telling that in 2023 alone, a staggering 170,000 restaurants in Shanghai closed their doors. Even the once thriving city god temple is facing bankruptcy with a 1 billion yuan auction price tag, and yet nobody is interested. I really couldn't believe it. Shanghai City God Temple has actually gone bankrupt. You'd think that wouldn't happen, considering it's a must-visit place for tourists coming to Shanghai. The number of visitors is exceptionally high, so how did it end up closing down? It's worth noting that it was up for auction for just 1 billion yuan and still went unsold. In the most economically developed cities of Shenzhen and Guangdong, countless private enterprises have collapsed. This is a company in Shenzhen, a business that had been around for over a decade, now empty, leaving nothing but disarray behind. This is just one of the many that fell during the Shenzhen closure tide. The year 2023 was said to be the most difficult year to endure, with a wave of business closures, unemployment, and mortgage defaults. It was hoped that entering 2024 would bring a glimmer of hope, but it's turning out to be an even darker beginning. The year 2024 for the Chinese started with a stock market crash. Entering the new year, the A-share market began a continuous decline, and on January 22nd, a stock market crash happened. Out of more than 5,000 stocks, only less than 100 went up. There were 4,000 companies with a drop of more than 5%. All three major indexes collapsed, with the Shanghai Composite Index falling directly to 2760. The A-share market once again shattered the last vestiges of confidence of Chinese investors at a breakneck pace, obliterating what little wealth they had left. An investor expresses his anger and sorrow in a video on Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok. "I lost 150,000 yuan today, and I've already lost 500,000 since New Year's. Isn't this a stock market crash? Did they remove the term stock market crash from the dictionary? Aren't we not allowed to talk about it anymore? There are over 5,000 companies in total, and at the worst of the times, only a few dozen were in the green, while more than 5,300 were in the red. How are you supposed to buy in such a situation? Even if the gods were buying, they'd still be losing. Venting emotions won't help, but right now, it feels like being an unloved and uncared for child, completely helpless. Some call the A-share market the world's worst, dismissing it as a cash machine for the privileged few, cloaked in legality while it loots public wealth. As global markets reach new highs and investors are making profit, the A-share market seems to ensure that its investors only lose money. Wave after wave, business closures, unemployment, stock market crashes, Chinese people indeed shiver through this cold winter season. In 2023, many internet giants began massive layoffs. Alibaba announced a workforce reduction of 20,000 employees. Tencent laid off 10,000, and NetEase downsized its workforce by nearly 50%. In the Yangtze River Delta and the Pearl River Delta, regions where numerous foreign enterprises are concentrated, the withdrawal of these companies and the closure of factories have left hundreds of thousands of workers jobless. Due to geopolitical tensions and some inexplicable crackdown policies by the Chinese government, foreign investments have accelerated their withdrawal in recent years, leading directly to 40 million job losses in China. Taiwanese enterprise Foxconn, which has factories in many Chinese cities and is a major local employer, came under sudden investigation by China's tax and energy departments in October 2023. This investigation had a detrimental effect, leading to a sharp decline in Foxconn stock prices. After losing 300 billion yuan, Foxconn's founder, Terry Gou, announced his complete withdrawal from China in a fit of rage. Foxconn's departure has indeed shattered the livelihoods of millions of Chinese people. Zhengzhou, the capital city of Henan province, once prospered because of Foxconn, now sees its prosperity gone with the wind, leaving behind empty streets and a surge in unemployment. Many people chose to settle and buy homes in Zhengzhou because of jobs at Foxconn. Now with Foxconn gone and their jobs lost, tens of thousands are leaving Zhengzhou, leading to a glut of vacant homes where one could buy a place near a subway stop for just 100,000 yuan, about $14,000. Public data indicates that in 2021, foreign enterprises, which only comprise 2% of businesses, contributed 3 trillion yuan in taxes, making up 1/6 of China's total tax revenue. In major cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Shanghai, foreign enterprises contributed to over 50% of local GDP. More importantly, they provided employment for over 40 million people in China. Early reports suggest that in 2023, unemployment levels in China approached 100 million, and millions of people were unable to pay their mortgages and car loans. By the end of 2023, China had 8.5 million people who became defaulters due to their inability to repay various loans. Without jobs, even the younger generation cannot lie flat, a term for social protests against societal pressures. Who has the heart to date or the means to buy a house, get married, or have children when even their next meal is not secured? According to the latest data from China's National Bureau of Statistics, in 2023, there were 9 million newborns in China, which is more than the expected 7 million. However, many believe these numbers are inflated. There are claims that the initial collected data was only around 4 million. Stock market crashes, waves of business closures, unemployment surges, and a population decline. The Great Economic Depression in China has finally arrived. Some say that the pandemic has caused a global economic downturn, and China is just one of the affected. But is this really the case? If we extend the timeline back 10 years and review the events of the last decade, perhaps a different conclusion would be drawn. In the second half of 2023, China suddenly banned a book titled Chongzhen, with a cover line translating to, "If one consistently makes poor decisions, and the more committed they are in governing, the more likely it is for their nation to perish." Rumors suggest that the book uses Chongzhen, the last emperor of the Ming dynasty, as a metaphor for Xi Jinping's regime, which is accused of pushing China's economy into an abyss with a series of poor decisions. So let's look at the questionable decisions made by the CCP leadership over the past decade. Financial blogger Lao Man cites 8 major economic missteps the Chinese authorities has made in the last decade. 1. The empty cage for new birds policy, which we will explain in a bit later. 2. The blunt implementation of environmental policies, which have driven away basic manufacturing industries. 3. The P2P lending crisis. 4. Stock market crashes. 5. The real estate destocking policies, which have eroded household wealth. 6. The 3-year zero COVID policy. 7. The crackdown on the education and training industry. And 8. The incomprehensible policy of moving rice cultivation uphill, trampling on personal and property rights of private enterprises and the general public. Let's clarify what empty the cage for new birds means. Simply put, it's about inviting high-tech enterprises in and relocating low-end manufacturers out. The policy, first proposed by Guangdong, was promoted nationwide in 2014, together with environmental policies, in a one-size-fits-all approach. And the outcome? As someone put it, the old birds flew to Vietnam and India, and the new ones never settled in. Thus, without the high-tech replacement, Many people lost their livelihoods. So, are these mistakes truly a result of a lack of intelligence? Lauman raises a provocative question. Every one of these events was deliberately pushed forward by the Chinese Communist government, and even when faced with serious questions, the implementation did not stop. Why is this? Lauman said that each person has a 50% chance of being correct when judging a single issue, but the probability of getting it wrong on 8 major consecutive issues is low. Even with the poorest decision-making skills, it's statistically improbable to make the wrong call on every one of the 8 major issues, not to mention some other decisions in recent years. These include supporting Russia in the Ukraine conflict and backing Hamas during the Israel-Gaza clashes, which all seem to be on the wrong side of history. Mathematically speaking, the probability of getting every question wrong is so low as to be virtually impossible, yet it has indeed happened. This can only indicate one thing. It was done deliberately. So why would the policymakers intentionally push the Chinese economy into an abyss? What could possibly be the reason for such action? China is an authoritarian state, and industrial civilization is the biggest enemy of authoritarian regimes. They can only coexist for at most a generation. Once a significant contradiction arises between the economic base and the superstructure, a choice has to be made. Either maintain the economy or preserve the regime, but not both. Given all the decisions that have gone against sound economic policy over the past decade, it's clear that the choice was made 10 years ago to abandon the economy and preserve the political regime. Lauman meticulously traces how the Chinese government carefully planned an intentional recession over a decade, all while making the populace believe they were living the Chinese dream. The first step was all about appearance, pretending to improve the economy with slogans like catching up with Europe and the US, setting out ambitious industrial development plans that will never be implemented, firing up the masses with passion and dreams, blinding them to the harsh reality of de-industrialization about to hit, thereby minimizing potential social resistance. Next, they found ways to empty the pockets of the common people. Without the ability to start businesses or invest, the pace of industrial development would essentially ground to a halt. Small and medium-sized manufacturing enterprises could no longer follow a path of refined development and were naturally eliminated. The method was simple. Stock market crashes and P2P lending could only strip wealth from some, but inflating the real estate market bubble and encouraging everyone to speculate in housing was the fastest way to drain resources. As a result, in 2015, the real estate destocking policy emerged. Banks, trusts, and funds lent money to real estate companies recklessly, while banks invested ways to encourage the public to take out mortgages. The annual increase in real estate loans surged from 5 trillion yuan in 2015 to 7 trillion in 2016, and even reached a peak of 9 trillion in 2020. The government then tightened the financial flow and rapidly inflated the housing bubble. With the public's wallet drained, they had no power to support the market. Consequently, the bubble promptly burst, causing a rapid contraction in the market. At this time, while the Chinese government proclaimed its desire to save the market, it was unwilling to actually spend the money to do so, instead coldly waiting for the market to die a natural death. In this process, the Chinese economy was bound to suffer greatly, especially with the local government debt crisis, which sends shivers down the spine. But what does it matter? The real buyers of local debt were various financial and insurance products, so it's the public who has to bear the brunt of the local debt crisis. The transformation of local debts into bad debts was just another way to further deplete the wealth of the people. Thirdly, they quietly drove away foreign enterprises. Foreign investment was a catalyst for China's industrialization, and leaving foreign enterprises in place would mean leaving a spark for industrialization, which was unacceptable. Thus, after 2014, the survival environment for foreign enterprises began to deteriorate. In 2013, the number of people employed by foreign enterprises reached 29.6 million, but this figure began to decline, dropping to 22.8 million by 2022, which is a decrease of 23.1%. However, this fell far short of extinguishing the spark, so in 2023, the operating environment for foreign companies deteriorated even further. A combination of measures, including espionage investigations, tax audits, and scrutiny of information security, was employed. As a result, the exodus of foreign enterprises accelerated significantly. Shanghai's financial foreign firms have essentially vanished. By the third quarter, foreign direct investment index in China had turned negative, standing at negative 11.8 billion. At this rate, within 3 years, except for a very small number of foreign enterprises that truly cannot leave, others will have all exited China. Fourthly, Chinese authorities aim to sever the reliance of Chinese yuan insurance on foreign exchange reserves. Before 2013, the central bank's assets were mainly derived from exchanging foreign currencies. However, the situation took a sharp turn. The proportion of foreign exchange in the central bank's assets rapidly decreased, falling to 51.5% in 2022, and by November 2023, it dropped below the halfway mark of 49.9%. Removing the foreign exchange factor from the yuan insurance is a necessary step towards de-industrialization. Even if the yuan exchange rate depreciates to the level of the early reform and opening up period, it wouldn't matter. But accomplishing these 4 tasks is not enough. China's manufacturing industry has a strong ability to generate a trade surplus in foreign exchange, which poses a significant challenge for the policymakers. Accidentally reviving foreign exchange reserves and reactivating the commodity economy would seriously hinder the grand plan of de-industrialization. Consequently, an inconceivable development occurred. In the past 4 years, a cumulative trade surplus of $2.84 trillion completely vanished without a trace in the financial data, becoming the biggest mystery in the global financial community. With such a massive sum of money disappearing under China's stringent foreign exchange controls, it's clear that this was the result of deliberate manipulation by the policymakers. After all these obstacles were removed, the policymakers still face a severe issue. What should be done about the governing of the Chinese people after de-industrialization? Would they be easy to control? Could they be controlled at all? That's why in early 2020, when the COVID-19 virus emerged, policymakers got to test a completely new management model: widespread societal control. Chinese citizens were divided by neighborhoods and grids, held firmly in place, prohibited from moving, working, or even going out to buy essential goods. This experiment yielded satisfactory results, from international metropolises like Shanghai to the tiniest rural villages. A simple phone call from a neighborhood committee or cordoning off with a string could silence entire communities, to the point where not even a dog would bark. Chinese citizens, it seemed, lacked any sense of striving for freedom. The concept of freedom and equality has simply not taken root in their minds throughout an entire generation's exposure to industrialization. At this juncture, the national policy of intentional recession has reached the stage of reaping its final results. Chinese people have had their minds and wallets thoroughly cleansed, the most challenging external factors already eliminated. The trial of the widespread social control model has proven highly successful, with little concern about any kind of rebellion. De-industrialization has undeniably become irreversible. In 2024, preparations are underway to initiate the final harvesting plan. The stock market crash was just the beginning.